The heart is the clay, the vessel that receives the crusher from above. It is as we learn about the breaking of the vessels that if the clay is broken, everything you put in it will spill out. Likewise, if the heart is broken, meaning the will to receive controls the heart, abundance cannot enter there because everything that the will to receive receives will go to the kipot, the shells, the peels. This is called the breaking of the heart. Hence, a person prays to the Creator and says, "You must help me because I'm worse than everyone, since I feel that the will to receive controls my heart, and this is why nothing of can enter my heart. I want no luxuries, only to be able to do something for the sake of the Creator, and I am utterly incapable of this. So, only you can save me." By this we should interpret what is written. The Lord is near to the broken-hearted. That is those who ask the Creator to help them so their heart will not be broken and will be whole. This can happen only if a person has been rewarded with a desire to bestow. For this reason, he asks the Creator to give him the desire to bestow, since he sees that he lacks nothing in the world but the ability to work for the sake of the Creator. It follows that he is asking only the nearness of the Creator, and there is a rule measure for measure. Hence the Creator brings him closer. This is the meaning of the words, "The Lord is near to the broken-hearted." According to the above, we can understand what is written there, quote, "keeps all his bones, but not one of them is not one of them is broken," end quote. Man's bone in Hebrew etzem, that means both bone and essence. So man's bone is the heart, man's essence is the heart. A desire in the heart. The desires in man's heart constantly change. Microphone writes, in the article "My Fog of My Salvation," a person has a desire for spirituality within him which comes from himself. In other words, even when he is alone and there are no people around him to affect him or from whom to absorb some desire, he receives an awakening and craves to be a servant of the Creator, but his own desire is certainly not big enough for him not to need to enhance it, so he could work with it to obtain the spiritual goal. Therefore, there's a way, just like in corporality, to enhance that desire through people on the outside who will compel him to follow their views and their spirit. This is done by bonding with people whom he sees that also have a need for spirituality, and the desire that those people on the outside have begets a desire in him, and thus he receives a great desire for spirituality. In other words, in addition to the desire that he has from within, he receives a desire for spirituality that they be getting in him, and then he acquires a great desire with which he can reach the goal. Active workshop question: how do we put ourselves under the influence of the environment in the lesson? Again, how do we put ourselves under the influence of the environment in the lesson? Active workshop. First of all, we see and feel all the friends, the whole world's clay, together with us in the lesson. We read the text together. We feel the lack that each one has to add to his. We're in his yearning for the goal, and also we remind ourselves that we're not individual. We're a spiritual vessel that's shattered, that wants to reconnect, reform, and we have the opportunity to do that in the group with the friends who are each the greatest of the generation. The influence of the environment depends on the measure of the effort that each and every friend makes in order to incorporate, where one comes out of oneself and looks for that shared mutual place between us. And when we all do it together, we create a very strong environment that leads us to the goal. That common area is something we look for and pray over. That's why we can put ourselves under the influence of the environment as long as we think about that mutual place or area which is outside of me and in the connection with the friends, and to try and make this picture as emotional as possible. Yes, we're in the very best possible environment for spiritual advancement. In the morning lesson with all the friends, we all have the same goal with the source texts with vowels, lessons. All that's left is just to demand to ask for the light, and the beginning is that we want to be influenced by the friends and the teachers and the books. This is our prayer for the lesson, and we're grateful for it, and let's try to be present in the lesson together. Yeah, and ask the Creator together. Okay, yes, We should be as one man in one heart in the lesson, and demand all the lacks of all the word. Plea they demand to go with us. Friends, we heard our teachers say many times that we need to actively draw the light, and for that we need to come to the lesson with a scrutinized in advance so that the person will know what does he want for the light to change in him. So let's go into a silent workshop and let's connect all our desires for spirituality into one desire to achieve the goal and to cleave on to him. Again, let's connect all our desires for spirituality into one desire to achieve the goal and to cleave on to him. Sound workshop. Shalom. Hello. In the first part of the lesson, we learn from a recorded lesson from the 29th of September 2002, based on the article, What are the commandments that a person tramples with his feet? We read the article together in the 10. We have 33 minutes for that. What are commandments that a person tramples with his feet? It is written in the portion of a Kev. Because, quote, and it shall come to pass that when you listen, the Lord your God will keep with you the covenant and the mercy that he has sworn to your fathers. End quote. And Rashi interprets, quote, and it shall come to pass that because you listen, if you keep the light commandments that a person tramples with his feet, you will listen, and the Lord will keep, etc. will keep his promise. End quote. We should understand the Creator's stipulation. If you keep the light commandments, I will keep the promises I have given to the forefathers. Otherwise, I cannot keep them. Surely the conditions that the Creator wants are not similar to a flesh and blood king who presents stipulations in favor of the giver. Surely here they are in favor of the creatures, meaning that otherwise they cannot receive what he has promised. Therefore we should understand the condition of light or easy commandments. To understand the condition, we must first understand the promise that the Creator promised to the fathers. Clearly, this does not pertain to corporality, for the promise was certainly for the Creator to give the people of Israel that they will be rewarded with the purpose of creation called doing good to his creations, which is that the souls will obtain the roots of their souls, regarded as the 5 parts of the soul, called in order for the souls to obtain what has been prepared for them to receive, and in order not to feel the bread of shame while receiving the delight and pleasure. We were given the work called the work of bestow. This means that first one must accustom himself in this work in order to have room for choice, meaning to be able to choose the intention with which he observes the 12 commandments. There had to be a restriction and concealment, for then there is room for choice. However, if the pleasure were revealed, then he would have had to observe Torah and commandments in order to receive, and he would do everything to satisfy his self-love, because it cannot be said that he does everything in order to bestow, since when there is the disclosure of life, the pleasure is greater than all the corporeal pleasures. In corporeality, we see a rule. The smaller the pleasure, in order to relinquish the pleasure, the less work there is. Also, it cannot be said that the pleasure one receives is with a intention only to bestow if he cannot relinquish it. That is, he must be certain that if he cannot aim to bestow, he is willing to give up the pleasure. Therefore, the smaller the pleasure, the easier it is to give up. This is why we were given the concealment on the taste of Tawan commandments, and we were given a taste for corporeal pleasures, and we must believe in the words of the Holy Zohar that every delight and pleasure that exists in corporeal things is only a thin light, meaning a very faint light compared to the light of the pleasure that is dressed in Torah and commandments. For this reason, there is a reality where one exercises on corporeal pleasures, and afterwards he can come out of the concealment and restriction to some extent, for he can already choose and say that he is receiving this delight and pleasure only because he wants to bestow. Afterwards, if he passes the trial and receives the small discernment he has attained in the work of the Creator, he's given a bigger degree on which to aim to bestow. Thus, he goes from degree to degree until he attains all his from the root of his soul. And that a person attains is the 613 ways of the Torah, which are the 613 mitzvot in the Torah, and the 7 mitzvot of our great sages, which is Gematria, which in Gematria are 620 names. That one can attain. It is written in the book of sage fruit. It is written the tree of life. The worlds were created only to disclose the names of the Creator. Thus you see that since the soul came down to clothe this filthy substance, it could no longer cleave to its root, to its own world as it was in its root before it came to this world. Rather, it must increase its stature 620 times more than how it previously was in the root. This is the meaning of the entire perfection, the entire up to for which is called, applying the number 620. Now we can see what is the promise that the Creator has promised the fathers, and how is it possible to attain such wholeness? That question is asked from two sides. 1. The need for this great wholeness. We know that there is no light without a vessel, meaning no filling without a lack. This brings up the question, how can we have this feeling that we need to obtain there? According to what we explained, all the corporeal pleasures that the whole world is chasing are nothing more than a tiny spark compared to the pleasure in Gusher. And when one is rewarded with having even a tiny elimination of Gusher, he will feel a great satisfaction with it. So who will tell him that he is still deficient to the point that he must obtain the light of? He will feel that he has not yet achieved wholeness. Who will notify this to him? 2. How can one overcome such great pleasures and say that if he cannot aim the reception of these pleasures to the Creator, then he gives up the pleasures? From where will he find such strengths? After all, we see that even in corporeal pleasures, of which we said that they're but thin light sparks that have fallen into the kipot, it is difficult to overcome them and say that we relinquish these pleasures if we cannot aim in order to bestow. And since concerning corporeal pleasures we see that they divide into great pleasures and small ones, it is all the more in spirituality, where there are many degrees and discernments. So the question is, from where will one take such great powers to overcome? To understand the two above questions, 1. From where will he take the need for greatness? And 2. From where will he take the strength to give up the pleasures, so he can be sure that the pleasures he is taking are only in order to bestow contentment upon his Maker? We should proceed with the words of our sages. Said man's inclination overcomes him every day, and seeks to put him to death as it was. Said the wicked, which watches the righteous, and seeks to put him to death. And if the Creator did not help him, he would not overcome it, as it is said, the Lord will not leave him in his hand. We said that there are two questions here. 1. If man has been given the evil inclination, why is he unable to overcome it? But the Creator helps him. After all, choice means that a person can overcome. But here, it is implied that one has no choice to overcome, but only with the Creator's help, and by himself he cannot overcome it. This brings up the question, why did the Creator not give man the strength to overcome it? If man cannot overcome, why does it say that the Creator helps him? This means that a person must begin to overcome and see that he cannot overcome, and then the Creator helps him. Why does the Creator not help him as soon as the evil inclination comes to him? What does it add to us that a person begins the work, since he cannot prevail anyway? Therefore, why does the Creator have to wait until a person begins the work and then help arrives? What is the benefit from losing time by the Creator waiting for a person to begin the work? Who gains from this loss of time? After all, the Creator should have given the help as soon as the evil inclination comes to a person, before a person begins the work. Why should the Creator wait for a person to start the work, and then the Creator will help him? The thing is, as we said in the previous articles, that the restriction and concealment were in order to correct the world. Otherwise, there would not be any possibility for man to be able to even begin the work of overcoming self-love, since by nature the will to receive controls, and this is the axis of creation. What comes afterwards is only a correction to correct the will to receive. It turns out that the will to receive is the main thing, and the rest of the things that come later are only to correct it. It follows that the will to receive remains, but corrections are added to it. However, who is the one who undergoes all the corrections? It must be the will to receive. It is known that even when we say that there is a degree that wants the desire to bestow, it still means that it does not use the will to receive that there is in the degree, but overcomes its desire and engages in the desire to bestow. It follows that the corrections that one should do are only on his vessels of reception, meaning to place on it the intention to bestow. And since the greater the pleasure, the more difficult it is to give up and say that if he cannot aim to bestow, he does not want to receive the pleasure. Therefore, two things must be corrected here. One, the coarseness, meaning the will to receive, so it is not too big, namely that the lower one cannot overcome. For this reason, he must be given smaller lust. Afterwards, when seeing that he can overcome a small pleasure, he is given a greater pleasure. And if we see that he can overcome this pleasure, he is given a greater pleasure still, and so on. But how do we arrange it? Therefore, man was given the work and faith above reason, which man slates from the word flippant. This means that a person does not respect this work and considers the time he must serve with faith as a state of loneliness. That is, he understands that this work is for women and children, but not for intelligent and acute people. Conversely, they must understand everything they see happening in the world, so it corresponds with their view and spirit. And when they need to do something, but do not see that it is to their benefit, how can they agree to do things that are fit for fools, meaning people who do not scrutinize their thoughts or actions? For this reason, they always try to avoid such matters. If they sometimes happen to work above reason because they have no choice, since reason is far away from them, they constantly wait for when they can be freed of such states. After all, it is unbecoming of us to live in the air when the intellect does not understand everything he does as necessary for what he wants to achieve, and he wants to achieve a degree where he is among the prominent ones in the public. When he looks at the public how they engage in mitzvot without any criticism, he says about them that they cannot observe everything enthusiastically and be meticulous with every detail because they have no sense of criticism. This is why they can be like that with eyes closed. That is, if they had some brains they would be like me, that is, I observe, but I see that this work is unworthy of me. However, I do not have a choice, since otherwise I will have no connection with Judaism, and therefore for me everything will be forced and involuntarily and involuntary. For this reason, as long as I forget that I'm going above reason, I can do everything like the rest of the people. But when I get the thoughts about the basis on which my Judaism is built, and I have to reply to my body that it is only as in the earth hangs on something I cannot overcome, and say that the foundation of Judaism is based precisely on faith above reason, and specifically lucky now I can keep the commandment of faith, since now I see that I have no basis. But usually a person falls and lies under the weight of these questions. Indeed, this is the question of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who said, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice?" For this reason, a person says that the path of faith the Creator has given us to work on this way will never succeed. And if the Creator had only listened to me, he would have let us work on the basis of knowledge and not faith. Certainly many people would join in keeping Torah and mitzvot. But in this way of faith, there are many people who, even though they began this work, they escaped from the campaign, said that the Creator chose that we should walk in the path of faith, not because man is of inferior degree, so he cannot be guided except by the path of faith. Rather, this is the most successful way. This is why the Creator has chosen this way, so they will take upon themselves the order of the work by which they will be able to achieve the goal called doing good to his creations. So the creatures will receive delight and pleasure, and will also be in complete adhesion, meaning in equivalence with the Creator. And although the creatures do not understand it, this is the truth. It therefore follows that although faith is a slight and lowly matter, and we interpreted that slight comes from flippancy, meaning that it is not appreciated, it is still the way by which we can succeed in achieving the goal. By this we will understand what Rashi interpreted. Quote, "If you observe the light commandments that a person tramples with his feet, you will listen about this." End quote. That is he referred to faith which a person tramples with his heels. You will listen about this, and then you will have the vessels, or the means to reach the goal. This is what Rashi interpreted. Quote, and to keep will keep his promise. End quote. This means that the condition the Creator has set is not for the sake of the Creator as it is the way of flesh and blood who set conditions in favor of the giver, but with the Creator. The condition to observe the light commandments, aim for man's sake, aims rather for man's sake, for precisely by this one can achieve wholeness and be rewarded with what has been prepared for him by the thought of creation. Now we can understand what we asked. 1. Why does the Creator not help a person when the evil inclination overcomes him, but waits until a person begins the work to overcome and then helps him? As our sages said, quote, if the Creator does not help him, end quote, it is akin to a person carrying a heavy load that he does not have the strength to carry. So he asks for help and people come and help him. But when he does not ask for help, no one comes to help him. This can be said between man and man. But why should the Creator wait for a person to begin the work and cry out to the Creator to help him, when the Creator knows that he cannot overcome the evil inclination by himself, since the Creator did not give him the strength for it? What is the reason that the Creator did not give him the strength to overcome by himself, but seemingly told him, I have given you the choice to overcome the evil inclination? We should say that the Creator did give him the strength to overcome the evil, and at the same time we say that without the Creator's help a person cannot overcome it. It follows that these two matters contradict one another. We will understand these two questions with the two questions we asked. 1. When a person's rewarded with the smallest degree in spirituality, he feels in it greater pleasure than all the corporeal pleasures, as in the words of the array, that all the great pleasures we find in corporeal pleasures, which we see that the whole world is chasing these pleasures, and receive through them satisfaction in their lives. All the pleasure in them extends from Adasher, where through the breaking of their vessels and the sin of Adam with the tree of knowledge holy sparks fall into the kibbut. The Holy Zohar calls this light, thin light, which descended in order to sustain the kibbut. All the corporeal pleasures extend from this and the smallest degree in spirituality, which is Gusher, where the essence of the light is found. He is certain to drive satisfaction from this and will have no need for good lot. Thus who will tell him that he needs good loot, too, from where he take such great powers that he will be able to receive the great pleasures in order to bestow, or else he will be willing to relinquish them. It follows that since there is no light, without a clay, meaning no filling, without a deficiency, for this reason, a person must begin the work when he wants to overcome the evil inclination but cannot. He becomes deficient. When he sees that he cannot overcome, he asks the Creator for help. At that time, the Creator can give the filling, because he already has a clay to receive the filling. The reason that the Creator did not give him the strength to overcome by himself is that when a person has some filling, he settles for what he has. Then a person has no need to be rewarded with of the soul by the Creator helping him, as it is written in the Holy Zohar, he who comes to purify is aided, and he asks with what is he aided? He replies with a whole. When he is rewarded, he is given. When he's rewarded more, he's given a follow. That receiving help from above causes him to need to extend his. That is each time he wants to overcome his evil, but cannot. The Creator helps him with a holy soul. But if the person could overcome by himself, from where would he have a need to ask the Creator to give him a higher degree than the one he has? But now that he's asking the Creator to help him, he's not asking for degrees. Rather, he's simply asking the Creator not to be under the control of the evil. It turns out that the reason why a person wants the Creator to help him have the strength to aim in order to bestow and not be in the domain of the, but that he wants to be in the domain of Dasha, meaning that his only wish will be to bestow upon the Creator, and this is all he needs, and not any high degrees, but simply to serve the Creator and not himself. This is the force he asks of the Creator. When the Creator helps him, the Holy Zohar says it with the help of a holy soul. Each helps through a soul the Creator gives him. Therefore by this he goes from degree to degree until he attains the completion of soul called. Now we understand what our sages said. Man's inclination overcomes him every day. This brings up the question, why does he need to overcome the evil inclination every day if he has already received the help from the Creator and has defeated it? Why does it need to come to a person once again? And for what purpose does it come each day? With the above we understand that since, through the help he receives from the Creator, he receives a soul, then each overcoming where a person wants to overcome and be pure, he thereby receives a soul. This is why these overcomings cause man to be able to attain the of his soul. And the second question, from where will he take strength to overcome? It is not by his own strength, rather this is the help that the Creator gives so he can overcome it. Follows that through one thing there is correction of two things. Through this we have great connection. Corrections made by the Creator, restriction and concealment. And the concealment allows one to feel that well he cannot feel. Wholeness from small pleasures and overcoming forces him to turn to the Creator, otherwise he would not need the connection. Without these two things, concealment and overcoming, then he would never be able to achieve the perfection spoken of here. He also raises a question about work and faith above reason. He says that it's problematic. It's like there's nothing to hold on to. It's like hanging in the air. So, or really take the power to overcome from not from himself, but this is assistance given by the Creator so as to be able to overcome it. It follows that one thing corrects two things. Moving on to the next part, a lesson from 2002. We've read the article from the portion, what are the commandments that a person tramples with his feet, with his heels, rather meaning that we have commandments, and the whole issue of the commandments. It seems to us unimportant in the will to receive because a commandment is an action in order to bestow, where the entire intention is to benefit the Creator, to benefit the other, outside of what exists, what will be in the will to receive. And so it doesn't matter if it's aimed for the Creator's benefit, the benefit of the society, the benefit of the friend, or someone else outside of me. For me, I don't feel it, and so it's called unimportant. What is not felt in the will to receive cannot be performed by a person because the person is entirely the will to receive, and so in a natural way, a person cannot perform a commandment, an action in order to bestow unless he attains the force of being, the force of the intention to bestow the light of grace or mercy, faith, the ability to act above reason. Never mind what exactly you call that ability, but to the extent that he has that ability, and also it depends on what level, what magnitude that correction is in him, he can then perform a commandment. And all the 613 commandments, they exist in all the 613 or 620 commandments, they exist in all the 620 degrees. The difference between them is over what general will to receive. A person can perform an act of pesto, and in order to be able to perform any kind of commandment, to observe any kind of commandment, a person first needs to make a restriction on himself, meaning that he receives nothing, that he doesn't aim anything towards himself. And here says that all the pleasures that exist in this world, in total in the entire region of this world, the plane of this world, different times and quantities in the souls, everything, if we gather all of them together, they are as a very, very thin candle compared to the smallest spiritual pleasure. So from here we can understand what kind of protective force a person needs to receive from above against the will to receive, so as to perform any action which is not for the sake of the will to receive, in order to make a restriction over his will to receive. And of course this is not within a person's ability. He can't even ask for these things. There is a calculation here. It's the same way you do with a baby who is crying. The baby is crying and the parents, they owe to the baby, and so they provide for him, give him. So a small overcoming is enough if it's in the right direction, and in return for that we receive a reaction, we receive the forces and the ability to advance towards the goal. Are the questions, please? At what point does the restriction come? The restriction The restriction is the splitting of the parting of the Red Sea, meaning transitioning from the will to receive to the will to bestow without determining any degree, the degree of the will to bestow. That is called the restriction, it meaning it's the ability not to turn towards in self and perform any calculations. We don't know how right now, but everything I do right now, look, any motion, this is from my will to receive, who decides that in this way it'll express itself better, it'll determine itself better, it'll make itself better and control the situation better, and so on. So in short, the will receive decides everything, so the restriction is on each and every degree that's. It says to what depth of the will to receive am I here aware conscious of myself, and I can control myself to this degree, and I don't take into account what I'm going to gain from the action I'm going to perform, like in his definition, right? What is the restriction? Denying his will, even though he wants it very much, he yearns very. We cannot approve the desire, it remains, but I control it, or I stop it. I hinder it right from usage. I deny it. Usage meaning calculating in it to, let's put it. Otherwise, let's put it differently, in the head. What exactly happens in the of the pulse? I perform a calculation in the will to receive from the perspective of the will to receive for oneself, from the side of selfish enjoyment, enjoyment, and I see exactly how the will to receive is open to me, and to the extent that I'm interested in make benefiting myself, and I restrict that, and over that I begin to turn the calculation towards the benefit of the Creator. That is the action, and on each and every degree, more of the will to receive is open to me in depth, in quantity, quality, and then I see how my thoughts are all tangled up inside the will to receive, and how my calculations are, and previously I didn't see them as so entangled, right? So to the extent to which every thought I have is about myself, and then it's the whole depth of it. It's the whole volume of the soul ultimately which is opened up before me, and then on each degree is the intention from that general volume of the soul. It's the degree, the region of it, that I can see where I think about myself, calculating only for myself. And this follows through to the 4 degrees of coarseness, meaning it's also how, let's put it this way, how my organs in my body are also self-interested. How each self thinks about itself, and so on, if to liken it to what we can understand, what we have. So the matter of the restriction is, after I know how I yearn to fulfill all of my vessels, sort of my wills according to the will to receive, after that I perform an action where, despite this yearning or above it, I yearn for the Creator to work with his lacks, his vessels. Well, so according to the article, first you do the work, then say that you're unable, then ask the Creator where, in this sequence, is the restriction, the stage of the restriction that's after a person recognizes the state of wholeness, perfection. In the story about the Exodus from Egypt, this is what is told. The restriction is a force that one receives from above after a person by his own power comes through the recognition of evil, and so 7 years pass for him, as it's told there, 7 years of starvation after the 7 years of satiation, where he thought that by reception he will fulfill himself and reach various achievements and somehow see some profit from it, but later he sees that the spiritual advancement in his will to receive, it reaches a point where the entire will to receive empties, is out actually, and we see that as weakness. We can't do anything anymore. We lose our will. We become apathetic to this world and failures, so to speak, unsuccessful. But this is the intention. The intention is for a person to resist this and go against it. Otherwise, he'll just veer off the path. And then when we come to the state of Pharaoh, then we receive actual blows, actual punishments. It doesn't mean that we've grown despondent. We've despaired of the work. Rather, we enter into those punishments, those glows. Because without these punishments, we would have agreed to die quietly. So to speak, these blows, these punishments, happen to scrutinize within us the point of Moses opposite the point of Pharaoh, where both begin to flourish, let's say, from the state called 7 years of hunger, starvation. But this is on the condition that the person over these 7 years is building pong and lamb, meaning he sweats. He truly does the work despite feeling that he's in a bad way. That's it. And then, after this whole process, that happens. Moses versus Pharaoh. We come to a state where we flee Pharaoh, so to speak, and that's the person going above reason to an extent. In the middle of the night, he agrees to go to flee, to run from the will to receive, not to be in contact with it to the extent that he knows it as the thing governing him, ruling over him, and this is still before the barrier, because he recognizes all the evil that it brings to him that we receive. And then he crosses, then he receives. From above, as per I've laboured and found, he receives the force of restriction from above, and after the restriction, he's just getting the force of restriction, and you always need to examine on what degree he receives the force of restriction when he exits his Egypt on the lowest degree, because the will to receive which grew in Egypt through the 7 years of cessation. Then he saw that it's to its detriment, to one's own detriment. It's actually 7 years of starvation. So for the will to receive, that's a very lowly state. So let's say, opposite this world compared to this world, as he says, if we take all the lusts of this world, they're like a tiny candle-thin candle in comparison to spiritual desires. And so, he lacks the degree to hold himself in spirituality. He's on the smallest degree, yes, and this is the matter of crossing the Red Sea and the days, the 3 days in the desert. But first of all comes the birth, right, the Exodus from Egypt. That's the birth of the screen. So what are you asking? I'm asking about the different stages in the work. There is the work, then a person sees that he's unable. After that he turns to the Creator. He asks for help. Wherein the sequence comes in, or is it not a part of this sequence? Comes in the tim. The restriction. The restriction is always, what is the prerequisition for the tim? What causes a person to ask for it? What causes a person to ask for the power of the tim? Person asks for the force of restriction on condition that he sees a step forward. Just go backwards, reverse, well, like in the computer you have one window and you can go forward one window and back one window, so go one back. What do you need? Data in order to reach the restriction from above. You'll be given the forces on condition that you prepare yourself, that you ask for these forces, discover them, need them. On what state? What previous state do you need to be for this to happen to you? In a state where you'll be you as Moses, opposite Pharaoh, you'll discover that your entire will to receive is so evil. It brings you such troubles, such punishments that you have no choice but to escape it. And to actually escape it, you can't do at. You might run, but this doesn't disconnect you from that intention. Pharaoh isn't the will to receive, it's the intention to receive. Right? All the positive things, the negative things, those are intentions. For the Creator's sake or for one's own sake. Right? The will to receive, we don't talk about it. We only talk about its magnitude, right? Because over that, over a certain degrees of the will to receive, you have the right line, the qualities of the Creator, the intention to bestow, and upon that same will to receive on the left line in order to receive the left side. So that's it. These two lines have to be of the same magnitude of the entire will to receive in this world, and there needs to be this inner conflict, one opposite the other, in such a way where you're ready for anything so long as you get to exit the rule of the left line as the right line is revealed. This is the matter of common to Pharaoh. Moses himself can't do anything, and Pharaoh rules over the world to receive. He rules over Egypt in general. So, but the Creator comes along with Moses. He illuminates through that point, through Moses, to the whole of Egypt. And so you have the issue of the people of Israel as well, meaning that there are other forces which together want to exit. So more and more discernments emerge, which want to exit Egypt, and the restriction is made over them. The differentiation between them and Pharaoh and Egypt. Right, the people of Israel leave Egypt, not the Egyptians, and nothing really happens there. Right, all the punishments and everything that happens, it's only in order to bring out the, let's say, which are included in a student. So the restriction comes only after the recognition of evil. The restriction comes after the stage of the recognition of evil, meaning to be in contact with the intention in order to receive means death. This is something that accumulates only after the 10 plagues. No, yeah, how much time does a person need to cross that? Is it a few years? There's no time in spirituality. How long does a person need in order to go through the 7 years in Egypt? At least the 7 good years are not bad ones. First of all, you can't go through the 7 bad years with this or detached from the 7 good years that we're told that they come one after the other. It's true and also not exactly, because they also come as a preparation. Each stage is one opposite the other. How long? It depends on the measure of the intensity in which a person works. How much does he invest on the path? How much is he aided by the experience and the force of the society and the study? You can extend it to 200 years, meaning a few good incarnations, and not just incarnations that you live for 200 years, but 200 years of advancement, meaning you study, and you could also do it in 2-3 years. Still, it's not a matter of months. This, what I want to say, don't think that in a moment something will happen on the one hand, on the other hand. And every moment you need to expect salvation, as it says the salvation is of the Creator comes as an. What exactly happens in the 7 good years and the 7 bad years? In the 7 good and bad years, a person begins to see his relation to his will, to receive, to his nature, the measure to which this will to receive controls him, how the control over of the will to receive over me is to my detriment, how much I lose as a result. Maybe I'm gaining in this world and I get along fine with the will to receive, but along with it I lose spirituality. If I begin to define spirituality as bestow, as coming closer to the force of bestow, of giving, then to the measure to which I will be more like the giver. Here begins the measuring of the intention in order to receive, how detrimental it is for me if I want to reach wholeness and perfection. And then, gradually, it becomes clear to me that really the state that I want to reach is the complete opposite of what I am in right now, and I don't like it. This state called spirituality, I hate it. How can you not hate it? To give, not to think about yourself, to think about everyone sitting here, for example. How could that be? And the more a person performs self-scrutiny, the more he sees that this thing is simply unachievable. So what do? Again, this is how a person is brought closer to the truth, that even in a single moment, that the truth is opened up to him, even for a single moment, and then it eats him off for a few months, and he runs away from this thought, but somehow it works in him. And the next time he suffers a bit less as a result, meaning he's a bit less afraid of it, he agrees with it in 1%. And then much time goes by until it is being disclosed to him what is it to mean to bestow, anywhere to bestow, and he's really shook up by it, so much so to give, not to think about myself. And again he runs away from that thought, hides it behind different things, dissemination, books, writing, jumping, whatever. Gradually different actions happen on the inside, and he was accustomed to it, and another percent that, yeah, maybe it's possible something like that, that maybe this situation or this state will be better for me. Still he deciphers it in a way that I'll give everything, but I'll gain from it. I'll feel good, meaning we'll learn from the troubles that the will to receive feels inside itself. We're still not entering spirituality. We think that spirituality is good, because otherwise we won't be able to run away from the blows. So it's still totally corporeality, but one way or another, by this kind of work, and I can't find the words yet, we come closer to a state where I want to run away from my will to receive, from thinking about myself, because the tiniest thought about myself brings me great sorrow. Great sorrow. I'm afraid of thinking about myself like a person that, there's this illness that people like stealing. They're very rich people. They have everything, but they come to a shop. They need to, steal some tiny thing. Indirectly they'd give $1 million for it. But to give $1 million and receive that in return will give them no pleasure. But their pleasure is in that they steal. I read about Penguin's wife. What was her name? There were a few of his people that followed her to make sure that no one will, that there won't be any problems. It's a real disease, and a person he reaches a state where he's afraid of stealing. He knows that he can't hold himself back until there comes such a fear where he simply needs to run away from the will to receive. Otherwise he'll be caught, otherwise it's death, meaning it's still happening inside the will to receive. But the hate for the will to receive, nonetheless, pushes him as if pushes him away from the will to receive, and then one way or another it happens as a miracle, the miracle of the Exodus from Egypt. It's at night darkness, where a person doesn't see how it happens, and in general, this how it is with each and every degree, every new transition, every new state comes where a person completely doesn't understand, doesn't know, confused. And after all the confusion and the disorientation comes a new state. Until then you look and expect in that very will to receive by the way for there to come in calm, for there to come a confusion and disorientation, everything, but there will be a better, newer state, and still you want it in the will to receive. And when you really come to the Exodus from Egypt, that's called a miracle. That there it is a thing that a person, he can't bring about this situation in any way, because it's really the boundary between the will to receive and the will to bestow there. It's really a cut down to endlessness up to the point of existence, from absence. That's why it's called the tearing open of the Red Sea. The Red Sea, it's not our will to receive, this tiny will to receive that separates between us and the spiritual world. Yam, meaning our entire vessel, and all of its mile and its finite form. This cut goes through it all, and only then it is shown to a person what he went through. It's a complete miracle. So 7 years, the good ones and the negative ones. Is there any connection to what I feel in corporality that a person can feel? What you go through has nothing to do with corporality. In the 7 good years, you could be in trouble, God forbid, in your business. And in the 7 bad years, you could be really on a roll, as one has nothing to do with the other. What is the role of the point in the heart? The point in the heart needs to all the time grow as a result of a person's connection to the environment where he is thinking, how will I nonetheless work with the environment, and in the measure to which he can absorb the spiritual idea from the society, the point in the heart grows. Page 40, 2/3 paragraph. This line, he says, because of that there's a possibility for a person to make to perform exercises regarding corporeal pleasures, and then he'll be able to emerge from the restriction and concealment to an extent. What does it mean? What are these exercises over corporeal pleasures here? What does it mean that we talk about? We say that we need to think about the friend, the group, to bestow to the friend, meaning to live out his desires, to give him joy. It's not in order for us to have a good time herein, but it's in order to examine accordingly how far I am, how far I really am from the will to bestow, how much I really hate this idea, how much I'll try maybe to forcefully implement upon myself the execution of the as if in order to bestow, to live in desires that are outside of me, that are not mine. And you learn from these exercises. He says, yes, friends, let's summarize what we've heard thus far. The main points of their lesson, right? We talked about what the tsun is, that he stalls his desire or holds it back, even though that he really yearns, he really wants. And Rob explained that in the measure to which that the soul opens up, in the measure to which I distance myself from the inward to receive, I see how complex my soul really is. And upon that, I actually want to make a tinsum, even though that the tinsum is not something that I do, but it is a force that comes from above after the 7 years of satiation, 7 years of hunger, and then, in the coming out of Egypt, we actually received the force of, and then you can aim in order to bestow, and to perform these actions, one needs importance and desire, and for that we need to magnify the point in the heart to make it bigger. And increasing the point in the heart, or by exercises, you increase the point in the heart. These exercises are mainly to bestow to the friends, and this form gradually discloses to us the true matter of the will to receive, that it takes a person much time to come closer to this idea. Every time he, and therefore it's also important that he will have a framework that as if allows him to run away or escape the inner work, but not to escape. Like Rav gave the example of the books and society and this and that keep the person somehow, but he needs to all time go back to that inner concept of what does it mean in order to bestow. We talked about restriction also. The restriction comes after the recognition of evil, the recognition that being connected to the will to receive, that's death for me, and it all depends on the intensity with which a person works, how much he relies on the experience and power of the group, the society, the study. We get the power to do the simum firm. It was said that you'll get this force from above on condition that you'll prepare yourself, and you will ask for these forces to reveal them, that you need them. Return and watch the lesson from the point where we stopped. Other the paragraph where it says he says here that due to this there is a possibility that a person will perform exercises on corporeal pleasures, and then he'll be able to exit the restriction and concealment to a certain extent. What does it mean? What are these exercises on corporeal pleasures? What does he mean? The fact that we're speaking about us needing to think about a friend, about the group, about bestowing to a friend, meaning to live his desires, to bring him joy. It's not so it will be fun for us here, but rather in order to check according to this how distant I am from the very desire to bestow, how hateful this idea is to me, the extent in which I will maybe try to forcefully perform this execution of in order to bestow seemingly, and the desires that are seemingly outside of me, not mine. From these exercise we learn, he says that, and then he can exit the manner of the restriction and concealment to an extent, because he has the reality of choice, meaning to say I receive this pleasure and delight only because I want to bestow, meaning to learn how much he is capable of doing this, and to what extent. Not that to the extent of what the meaning is, that it's still a lesson. He's still learning, and he doesn't know where he is. They are not yet talking about it really happening to him. Certainly a person can't begin and end such an action. No action is does he start and finish. He has to start the action to try to do it himself, and then the moment he constantly pushes to do and doesn't succeed, it's revealed to him that here the creator must be a partner and the main operator. What does it mean, the creator? What? The creator helps him with the holy soul. What is that? Oh, the creator helps him with the holy soul, meaning a person presses and presses and presses, and it's revealed to him that here there must be an action that's above human force, above this world, something that actually the thing that he's pressuring, the thing that he's touching has nothing to do with our reality. It has to do with a reality that's beyond the barrier. Then the barrier is revealed to him of what it is, which is the inversion. In thought and in thinking altogether, it's truly I've seen an opposite world, it's called. And then it's revealed to him that the one that can do this action is the upper force, the creator. In what way? With a holy soul, by truly giving him other forces, other thoughts, the ability and things that he didn't have before. That's called a soul, a new soul, a holy soul, in place of the nature that created him, in order to receive. Now he gives him a second nature in order to bestow. That's called the holy soulish Kadisha. Now a person receives forces in order to bestow, and you can relate it to, I don't know, a Kabbalist that was alive before. No, here the business is only between a person and the creator. There's no teacher here. There's no group here already. Nothing. The teacher and the group are the means that bring a person to a connection with the creator, and that's it. He must always lean on them. He must first be connected with them. But the thing is the cleave of the soul of a person with the light of the creator. There's no more than that. So the difference is we can say that the run of the latter is by Rabash and Balaam is the study of. There's no difference. What's the difference? What's the difference between studying the Rabash articles and study of? Every lesson needs to be divided to the part of the work feeling, to aim our thoughts to what to search, for to balance ourselves somewhat, put ourselves before the problem, before the goal. So for that we read first the writings of Rabash and what he wrote to the students, and then we move to the study of, as after I know what I want from life, let's say from my awakening from the article. So I approach the remedy, the medicine to that which will help me reach what I want. Now meaning the first part is discerning or scrutinizing the disease, and the second part is the healing, meaning. When I'm in the article I must be both in joy and sadness, in gratitude, in request, in all kinds of feelings. Yes, and mostly those feelings will actually be negative for what I'm lacking, for what I don't have, for what I don't reach yet to. That which I want, seemingly negative feelings, the revelation of their deficiency. And then when I already have the deficiency, I come to the study as I search for the one who will heal this. For me, the healer of all flesh, meaning for the reforming light to come and reform me, and then my approach to the study is the correct approach, for then I demand correction from the study. And besides correction, the study can't really give me anything. All these wisdoms that he gives us are completely external, only in order to somewhat be as a base to connect with the study itself, but inside we need to just demand the correcting force. What's the difference between the authors? The authors. What's the difference between the authors' writes about this? There's a difference between the authors and what they wrote externally and internally. There's a difference in the language, in how they wrote. I'm talking about the Kabbalistic authors. Yes, so each in his degree, each in his characteristics, and the form of revelation and measure of re-revelation. Hence we have to study only from one special soul, which is the soul, which is the soul that has been revealed in this world at 3 times 3 eras, in the same method, in revealing the method of correction. All the rest of the Kabbalists writes that it could be that they were much greater, just like Rabbi Acker. Relative to Rab, he was much greater, and besides Rab Acker, they were maybe greater ones, but they were not sent here in order to be our teachers. That's why we need to learn from their books. That's it. I don't know what else you're digging in. They're from your bright and big intellect, but what are you looking for? You're smart. You'll probably find in a few hundred years the path. Yes, how can I connect this thing? What I feel if I know that Nikever rises to Ba when I read this. Wonderful good questions. How do I connect my study to the Nukvar that rises to Banama, and all kinds of actions like this with what I'm lacking? In these actions you are learning of what's happening to you within. Let's say that rises to Ba is the part of the desire to receive that now is being corrected by forces in order to bestow of Biner of the upper force, which gives to that desire to receive that's connecting. It gives it the intention in order to bestow, and that is how you need to see really each and every action. But we're not going to go in detail the study of which action is this will to receive here, and what does it do, what kind of desire to receive now goes and receive some kind of form of correction that we're not capable. If you'll be in that degree, then you will feel it on yourself. You'll feel what's happening to you. Then certainly when you study the study of in such a manner that what you read will also be happening within, or according to what's happening within you, will find how it's written in that truly called man's soul will teach us, where you already in your soul feel all those actions, but for the time being, you read about these actions that go on inside your soul, but you're unconscious, and so you don't feel that they're happening in you. And then from those actions that you don't feel, but you want to reach their feeling, you yearn for them, you get from there a little illumination. It's called that. The surrounding light comes to you. It doesn't come nor go or return or descend, but rather your attraction to that state, to being in that action, gives you this illumination from there. You seemingly from afar grasp that state. It's called that the surrounding light comes to you, and then gradually this surrounding light sanctifies you, purifies you, brings you somewhat closer, and like this a little more and a little more. It means that what I'm reading in tests, I need to find it in inside somehow. Each soul of ours is in adhesion with the Creator in the highest possible degree, and also it is in all the rest of the states and degrees from that final degree to the lowest degree that I'm in right now. So if I take some book that talks about my soul on some spiritual degree, and I read and want to live, how does he write? They're in the introduction to test item 55. That we study and don't understand, but long to know what we're learning to know, means to connect with what we learn, and Adam knew Eve his wife, meaning to connect, and to have a coupling connected with our feeling with our senses, and from this you're coming closer to this thing. You want to it to happen, you want to be in him, and by this from that desire you draw to you somewhat from there upon you. That's the active action that a person can have, and the result of it is that you come closer to that state. But what is that state? That state is a state of bestow, is a state of your bestow to others without any appeal to oneself. That's how it is with each and every spiritual state. So before you think about this, you need to kind of spin yourself within a little bit to aim towards it, and not to win the lottery, or do some good business during the day, something else, meaning your direction needs to be towards the future spiritual state that will be revealed to you, and for you to want it, and for you to be able to somewhat draw it to you. That's why before the study we learn all kinds of articles about that we read about and scrutinize what is spirituality, what is the spiritual state. As the spiritual state is not that I who has now a few more zeros in the bank, you understand. It's me who the opposite of that, there's a few zeros before me, ahead of me, you know, as he writes, Rabash writes in the article where a person puts the zeros either after the one or before the one. So I understand that I'm not capable of making myself smaller. I'm not capable of giving. I'm not capable of thinking about giving. But if I scrutinize what that degree precisely is, and think about it during the study, but think about the correct definition of what it means to bestow, by that I bring that state closer. Balaam writes in the introduction of the study of tense how we need to study. So he writes that the definitions for words must truly be placed in the box in your intellect, in your mind. Why? So you don't imagine some quality, phenomena, essence of a word in a different manner than the way he explains. It should be clear to you that we're talking about bestow, giving, about no, return to oneself, etc. This thing is very, very clear. You're learning some spiritual action here. It should be clear to you that from the beginning to its end something here is happening, which is outside of me. That's why we need. He says that it's really important to read the definitions and truly learn them by heart. Why by heart? So that they will truly above my desire to receive and really be constantly ready for using them correctly. Because we're constantly replacing the meaning of the words, changing them. If the receive agrees to a certain work and it does it, and he wants a reward, but he already has the reward, otherwise he wouldn't agree. How can he replace that exchange, that reward? That it will be a different kind. It's impossible. Every action, every work in a group in the field of study, doesn't matter what. The receive imagines a certain reward, otherwise you wouldn't agree to it. We're asking about what reward we can imagine. We can't choose the reward. The reward is already there. It depends on the state that I'm in. Rather, what is a reward in spirituality? We don't know. We can't depict. You could just say words in order to bestow should be a reward for me. To do good for the Creator would be my reward. How could that be? How will I receive pleasure from that? How will I feel a plea that's outside of me, that's being filled, that feels? We don't have that. How do we enjoy adhesion? We cannot certainly feel with certainty feel such qualities inside of us. Not yet. How to want to replace the reward? Only out of blows. Only through blows. There is no other solution. Only in order to go through them faster is possible. If a person can tolerate it, and to suffer them, to tolerate them is possible. If you invert them from beastly sufferings to soul suffering, because animalistic, beastly sufferings spread and take a long time, and then you can suffer, but it takes a long time. If you want to shorten them, you can't do it on the same plane of the beastly sufferings. You can't remain on that. You must rise. You must raise the quality of the blows from beastly to spirituality, and then one blow will consider it, meaning that its soul or spiritual will be considered as 1,000 beastly blows, and by that you shorten time, meaning qualitative blows, we should say, in place of quantitative blows. How do we raise them from a beastly blow to a spiritual blow? We raise them from a beastly blow to a spiritual blow only by beginning to scrutinize precisely. How should we say this? We start scrutinizing how worthwhile it is. In the love of others, let's say. Yes, in the love of others. I should suffer from not having it. I don't have that love. So I begin to Move the blows from the beastly level to the spiritual level, at least from this to that, and then they're inside theirs. Meaning, what am I trying to say? The matter of compression. Compression of time is a matter of moving things from quantity to quality. Each time the blow needs to be more qualitative as much as possible, aimed to the goal to the extent as much as possible I scrutinize what spirituality is. Its definition is the extent that it's not for me and how it is against me and by me, not in being in that and feeling it. As a blow I say and not feeling it. As a blow I save a lot of time and just beastly blows. Let's say my concentration, my attention and my action is the process and the creator in this action. There's everything only the creator. Who's the creator? What is he giving out? Gifts or a force? To bestow pure, net no connection to himself whatsoever. Disconnected from the my desire to receive from what I will have from it. That scrutiny moves me from quantity to quality. And if it weren't for that, there's no compression of time. There isn't. Years go by. It's like everything returns, repeats. Did I get you right that from this work? In incorporality, the creator doesn't give me blows. He actually stops the blows that I need to feel in this world. The creator gives blows in accordance with a person's tolerance to suffer, meaning to the extent in which he's aimed to the truth, prepared himself to see the truth, with the society, with his family, with the inner preparation, to the extent in which he prepared himself. It's opened up for him and he's shown that he's not in this, under the condition that he doesn't run away. That's considered the willingness to suffer. And if a person doesn't yet feel that, the evil has been opened up for him. It's not yet ready. He's not yet ready to suffer. And then the creator, like to a baby, gives him, yet still waits until a person will prepare himself to really come closer to the truth. We need to understand that our path is nevertheless a path to the opposite of what we want within our original beastly desire. And there's nothing here that can be implied in us or expressed in us as good within the will of receive. But gradually we discover this also. What I'm saying now does not appear to us as it's like that. Anyway, so I wake up at night to exert a little to lose, but somewhere else I'm hoping I'll gain. I'll be rewarded with something. I'll benefit. We still have where to run to with our desire to receive in order to calm it down. That's not yet called a blow. A blow is where you can't justify and you can't give any answer to the desire. Well, let's study. Let's share our impressions from the lesson, and what from it do we take to apply in the 10 related to the order of the study. Are the order of our studies the scrutiny of the disease? In the beginning of the lesson, the articles of Rabash, we learn about the matter of mind and heart feelings. What we're lacking, the fulfillment of deficiencies, which is actually the scrutiny of the mid of the disease, and the study of test is the healing. We're studying with the reforming light as we read and we draw and want to be drawn to that exalted state that the Kabbalist talks about, and from our attraction to that upper state, we also draw upon ourselves the reforming light. And there was also about the force that opens for a person the desire to receive to the extent to which she's capable of tolerating or suffering, the extent to which it is bad. That's how much he can suffer. And here too, Raf, related to the fact that even if we're telling ourselves some story, but our desire to see doesn't exactly know where it's going, it doesn't really want to suffer. That's why the process is gradual. As much as we can suffer, we will be able to advance, and we must transfer the suffering from corporal suffering to spiritual suffering, more emotional, more qualitative, more exalted. So the smallest blow in corporality can raise a person up another degree. We can do all of that only if we aim to do our actions, which are already in adhesion and connection, connected with the Creator, to connect myself and the action we do that I do to the Creator. And the whole difficulty in this connection of these 3 points is to imply correctly, to interpret correctly who the Creator is. Is it the one that's supposed to fill me now, or is he pure, bestowed, disconnected from self-love? And this trajectory said has to be toward this future spiritual state that will be revealed to you, and that you would want it, that you will be able to draw it closer to you somehow. Bruv gave us a wonderful explanation how we can rise on the spiritual ladder when we don't know whatsoever the upper degree, said our entire soul is in adhesion with the Creator in the highest degree, and also it is in all the rest of the states and degrees. To this final degree read the lowest degree, which I'm now in. I think the entire lesson was around that point of coming out of Egypt, and the systems that help us come out of there, even at such a level that have the will to receive in recognition of evil, also helps us push us away from it, develop a deficiency to run away from it until the light actively does it and gives you the power to work this way. There's a lot to question. This lesson is something that Ra is putting us in a clearer direction, and in this clarity, it comes from the lack of clarity where you don't know exactly feel, and isn't that so? This confusion, it leads you to the next degree. So here, too, we shouldn't be afraid of these states, even invite them, and in this state invite all that the friends mentioned. After this lesson with Rav, we in a really perfect way are entering the study of. We truly received guidance, a precise guidance why we're approaching the study of now, how to access it, and how Rabash prepared us, awakened in us all kinds of qualities, deficiencies, desires, and we have to package all of that towards the receiving of the medicine to receive the reforming light through the study of tens. So let's read from the words of Rav. We have this also on our subtitles here on the headings in our transcripts. Let's see. So he says from the lesson, from now you're reading about these actions that go through your soul, but you're unconscious. You don't feel that they're going through you. And then from those actions that you don't feel, but you want to reach their feeling, you yearn for them, and then you get some illumination from there. That's considered the surrounding light coming to you. It doesn't come nor go back or return or ascend or descend, but your attraction to that state to be in this action gives you an illumination from there. It's like you're perceiving from afar this state that's considered that the surrounding light is coming to you, and then gradually the surrounding light sanctifies you, purifies you, brings you a little closer, and like this a little more and a little more and a little more. So let's enter to a little more before we enter the lesson. Let's read item 4 in the words of the read. Yes, we're page 6. We're reading item 4 by the space that remained after the restriction was round. Item 4. Then there remained a vacant place, air and an empty space from the very middle point, and that restriction was even around that middle empty point, in a way that the place of that space was round on all its sides, completely even, and it was not in the shape of a square with a perpendicular angle, for in so too had restricted himself like a circle, even on all sides. Now let's enter the lesson that relates to item 100 in inner observation, inner light. Item 100 relating to round on all its sides, and the words of Derry. Item 100. From the words of Derry, let's get into the lesson. Remember that we are drawing the light that will bring us to the correction. The study of the 10th volume 1. Little item 100 clarifying round in all its sides completely even. It means that there was some image that had to have been made because of the restriction, though the restriction was even as thoroughly explained above, and not because of any disparity of form. However, after the restriction and departure of the light from the middle point, it became revealed that the upper light is unfit to adhere to it because of the form of gadlut of greatness of reception in her. Because that was revealed, she fell from the degree she had in, and is now regarded as soft, meaning the lowest possible coarseness, for only that middle point remained a vacant space, unfit to clothe the light, meaning the difference between the previous expansion to the middle point is that it felt a difference, and the light that works in it and around it, and this feeling that was born in it in this point in the last phase. Phase 4 is what brings it now to be the center, middle point, and this feeling already belongs to the created being. Now when he says that it necessarily, there's been some image that had to have been made because of the restriction, we have to understand that this is the special relationship between the qualities We depict them in this way rather. There are no pictures and illustrations in spirituality, and we can't really illustrate spiritual objects. What we're doing is we illustrate, we draw the forces, the qualities in those spiritual objects, and we can't imagine any image here. Certainly rather, we simply take from our world such definitions of a circle, and we illustrate it as a circle. But we give it a spiritual definition. We take the definition of a square from our world, we relate it to spirituality, and the definition of the spiritual square. In other words, you shouldn't see in those images any more than the relationship between qualities or the forces alone. That's it. When I say upper and lower, I simply want to say that in spirituality, one is higher than the other. The second one is lower. What is higher and lower? Here for me in our world, it's its height. In spirituality, high means greater in the quality of bestow. So each time I need to see the illustrations, the drawings, and decipher them only according to spiritual definitions. Point, line, middle point, circle, area, all those things. When a person looks at the drawings, then there will be a lot of people who will say about us they constantly make those illustrations, they seemingly materialize the wisdom of Kabbalah. It's simply a lack of understanding that in our drawings we simply depict the relationship between qualities, and if you take my books, you'll see how many illustrations are there that the Rabash drew with his own hand, and how many photographs we have from him from Rabash, and how many illustrations and drawings we have from Balasim and also past Kabbalists, that they always illustrated many illustrations. We see in the Book of Formation, we see illustrations, but again understand that we're not talking about geometric shapes, but the relationships between forces. You once told us that Rabash opened a book that you showed him there a picture of a person with, and he immediately closed and said you didn't want to see it. Before I went to Bur to offer to give lectures there, I think in the 80s, 1980, 1979, Berg left Israel and travelled to the States, to the US, and I thought, Rabash, maybe I can get in there and teach lessons. I didn't think to bring them to Rabash. I thought there's young men who want to study, and I'll teach them. They're in that place. It makes no difference to us. And although it was Kabbalah Institute, which was, it was the other way around, right, that people would look down at it, but Rabash allowed it. I asked him, and he said, no, I showed him things. He said, just what is this place? So I went there. I brought all kinds of brochures, and I opened it up, and in that first brochure he saw that the body, inside the circle and on the body you had so immediately he shut it down. You shouldn't look at it, and I was impressed. What's forbidden first of all, it's the from the Middle Ages, right, that the Buvian men in the circle, it's not Da Vinci, right, but then they added this sheer on top of it. Well, big deal. What's okay, they put it. But certainly, you shouldn't look at it because that makes you acquire this method that can attach the soul to the body. Let's say as people think that the soul is somewhere in our body. Later, because of that, they go and they check the shadow. Is my soul okay? According to the shadow of the moon, right, you're laughing. But it's no joke, from we get all kinds of things from that, and Andism. I lower my hands below the taboo, below the belly button. It's already impurity, I raise them up. It's sanctity, I tighten my robe. This is I'm severing the upper part, from which is holier from the impure, and so on so forth. There are signs for sanctity, and that these are sign symbols that you behave in this world, in our world, in this way, in order to hint at your tendency for spirituality. That's something else. That's what the founding fathers of Buddhism intended when they established their Hasidic courts on these new customs that were not prevalent in Israel before, to wear all kinds of clothes, right, to do all kinds of actions to hint for a person at those spiritual actions. But later they made those actions holy, not because they point at spirituality, to which you need to yearn and reach. The actions themselves became sacred. You understand? That was the reason. That's why this movement went bankrupt spiritually. Now Rabbi saw this illustration. He said, "Oh, certainly." He said, "Oh, this you shouldn't see. Shouldn't look at it. But it doesn't matter." He said, "Berg, attached Vedic customs to Kabbalah. So what? You have an opportunity. You should go." So I went and I taught them for 6 months. I think I taught them preface. They only wanted to learn the preface. But together with the preface, I gave him all kinds of other discernments. And the thing that really broke them was that the sixth letter 64. Israel the light and the Creator are one walking on the path of truth. Actually, it's letter 17 by walking on the path of truth as we call it when I showed them that if you deviate a little right or a little left, you lose your entire life. That really crushed them. It put a lot of fear in them, and they came up and came to study with us because they saw that without the right direction from a wise person, from a sage like Rash, there's no hope. There's no chance of reaching the goal, and that's it. So they came to us, 40 people, I think, about 40, and it took a long time for the Institute to recuperate from that. I didn't have any intention to destroy it, God forbid. But if they came and they want to advance towards sanctity, you shouldn't do any other calculations. There's no more than and nothing more important than saving one soul. That comes before everything. So of course we accepted. Then those are the pictures, but we're talking about our own pictures, wherein our illustrations we specify certain actions or spiritual discernments in the spiritual world. We don't connect the spiritual world with the corporeal world, with our physical bodies, rather with desires. When I say material desires, corporal desires, spiritual desires, those are desires, not the flesh, God forbid. We're continuing, and the 3 former phases in virtue and refinement were still fit to clothe the light even after the restriction, and yet we have explained above that she did not become our S for the above reason. This is the meaning of the precision of the when he says, "The place of that space was round on all its sides completely even." He wishes to say that it's not as an actual sen ending, but like the S in a circular picture whose ending is in the middle. You can compare those 4 phases to 4 circles, one within the other like onion skins, where the central circle is phase 4, surrounded by phase 3, surrounded by phase 2, surrounded by phase 1. In this way, there's no up nor down, right or left discerned among them. For example, phase 1, which is above all of them in its one half, and below all of them in its other half, and so it is in all the phases. There's no up or down here, and likewise, right or left, in a manner which one has no merit whatsoever more than the other, and they are all completely even because there's one special quality about a circle, that all the points in a circle are the same points. They have the same value. There's no difference between a point that's above or below, right, left. Doesn't matter where you are on a circle. What's important is in which circle you are relative to the center, more external, more internal, closer or more distant, relative to the center. But in the circle itself, there's no difference. It's not important. Everyone is equal. All the points that make up a circle, there's no difference between them. You can say, well, if there's no difference between them, why are they many? We don't accept any other form of change or difference in the circle except that everyone is equal in the measure of their distance or proximity to the center. In other words, there's no difference between being above, so to speak, or off to the side or below. If I'm on the same circle, I can freely find myself in at any point on that circle. That's the quality of the circle. It has already been explained that the reason for the restriction was not disparity of form. This is the meaning of the precision of the round on all its sides completely even. Clear. No questions from the internet. Okay. Item 5. The words of there. Because the light of ends was even, the restriction was also even. This is the meaning of the circle. Item 5. The reason was that since the light of Ensal was completely even, it had to restrict itself evenly on all sides, and not restrict itself on one side more than on the others. It is known in the wisdom of geometry that there is none so even an image as the image of the circle. However, this is not the case with the image of a square with bulging perpendicular angle, the image of the triangle, and likewise all the other images, because their each and every point is already in a different position relative to the point next to it other than the circle, the sphere, anyone who's on the surface of that sphere or on the perimeter of that circle. They're all equal, and there's no other form so whole or perfect as the circle, or in 3D is the sphere, like a ball, whereas a square or a triangle, and that's why we use those shapes in the wisdom of Kabbalah to denote the differences between the states. Buddha. So we have a point, a line. Don't look at it as up or down. Just a line, a point, a line, a circle, a square, a C, a triangle, and the part itself that we draw it not as a square, but as a rectangle, angle, or tube. Those are the shapes we have in the wisdom of Kabbalah, and the second restriction in the middle, like the palsar, or it's this drawing here. The circle is clear to us that all the points on the perimeter are equal. Here we have up and down, right and left, where up and down is in the light of and right, and left is in the light of and the second restriction shortens this circuit, and here the part we draw it in this way, or the relationship between, and we have tense here in height and width. But these are the drawings, there aren't many more than that in the wisdom of Kabbalah, so a person should read the definitions of these shapes clearly, meticulously, to understand that a circle is even and equal and different from another circle only relative to the only with respect to the distance to the center. So if I have the smallest circle, and but I cannot compare to all the other circles I'm in. Why? Because all the points that I feel next to me, they're all equal. So then I feel wholeness. That then you need to have a line in the circle in order to show me that there's something else in addition to my state. That many things, but a question that comes from Israel. They're asking, what's the difference between the work in lines and the work in circle? We work only in lines. We don't belong to the circles. Circles are lights that come to us from above. Circles are the upper governance and providence that works on us in general. There's a general providence, and then the personal providence. The personal providence comes to me in a line, and I feel a personal relationship to the upper one, and accordingly I awaken to negative or positive force. Doesn't matter. That's private providence. That each and everyone receives a direct ray of light. That ray of light might awaken darkness and not light, but it doesn't matter. It's still personal, private, and general providence applies to all the souls together. It comes to them. It awakens all of them collectively to the end of correction, like a general feeling of pressure that works in all the records and to extract more of them, line after line of records that will awaken and emerge from concealment to revelation. It's like says that the incarnations are like a line of people who are standing, doing the going through the incarnation, then they get up again and go through the incarnation again. That's a general providence in circles. Why? Circles. Everyone advances equally. Each one is moving to another set of records, and another set, all of us like in a line moving through record by record. The circular light, the general light, works on everyone equally. In addition to that, you have personal providence or private providence that works on this one and that one and this one with respect to special souls, and the line works on their points. Let's go to the questions. Scrutinies. We're looking for question marks on the screens and here in the hall. If you have a question, please raise your hand in the beginning of item 100. He writes, and if so, it's already considered, regarded as meaning such a coarseness that there's no lower than it. And towards the end of this item he writes that the reason for the restriction was not because of disparity of form. So how can you explain that? If it's already considered as a soft, then there's already a beginning of a difference, and means coarseness the way he defines it. And in the end he says it's not because of disparity of form. Again, not as a result of disparity of form. It's clear. We read it a few times. We said the restriction was a result of adornment. We can read it again if we want. Items 72, I think, in the questions and answers. Question 72 or 78. What is the reason for the restriction of the light, written on page 30 in the Hebrew book? Question 78. What was the reason for the restriction of the light? And the answer is page 35. It says the matter of adornment, where Mal saw the need to for equivalence of form with its maker, which was possible to reveal only through the creation of the world, and is consequently it restricted itself again. The reason. What is the reason for restriction? The matter of adornment when saw to the equivalence of form to its maker, which was possible to reveal only through the creation of the world, and consequently it restricted itself. So it's clear that the restriction was not as a result of coarseness. There's no coarseness here yet. You can say about the difference between four phases of direct light that they are separated by coarseness. You can talk about coarseness only when you talk about the screen. You have the coarseness of the screen, the force of overcoming against the will to receive. So what's the question, Moshe? So he relates here to her falling from the degree that she had in, defines her as the con, as the state of. When he talks about, he says that it's after the restrictions. What is, where do you see it? In the last line before the end of item 100. Item 100, third line before the end. Because the reason for the restriction was not because of disparity of form. No. The first paragraph of item 100. You can even start before that. It was let's read item 100 again, meaning that it means that there was some image that had to have been made because of the restriction. And though the restriction was even, and not because of any disparity of form. Here, he says it here. However, after the restriction and departure of the light from that middle point, it became revealed that the upper light is unfit to adhere to it because of the form of reception in her, meaning that the departure of the light from the middle point is the restriction. Now it's clearer. After the restriction, there's still no coarseness there, but the upper light was not fit to adhere to it because of the form of or greatness of reception in her, because that was revealed she fell from the degree she had in, meaning only after the light comes the light and screen reflected light, she fell from the degree she had in. Okay, it's clear. Thank you. Before the restriction there's no coarseness and there's no disparity, you for no such thing. Women love 15. Thank you, teachers. Can you explain the last thing Raf said at the end there? The way go from circle to circle, from degree to degree. I didn't understand that. She means that in the circles the soul is like reincarnated again and again from generation to generation. So let's go over a little bit of what Rob said in the end of the lesson, that reality is managed by the light. Yes, and there's the providence of the light, called the governance in circles, which is also called the general providence, which in a general way the light advances humanity towards the purpose of Christian. And you can also read from the articles of where he describes all of humanity as souls that are kind of in one line walking, and they're advancing this way, and even though we see bodies replacing in this world, etc., it's the same souls that are developing by the light, and they're simply moving forward towards the purpose of creation gradually, slowly with the press of time that's advancing. That's called general providence. That's how the lights of the circles operate upon us. And there is what we call line, where it's a personal relationship. Private providence, where someone who wants to advance towards the light begins to change himself and adapt himself so that the light will operate upon himself more. That's what we want to do. That's exactly what we want to do. That's why we are here. That's why we're studying the study of, because we want to draw the light beyond the general influence he has on all humanity. We want to be those who work with him in the line, truly divide ourselves and check in ourselves how I can come closer and be more similar to the light, where can I do it less, and then we will start to discern what's above, what's below, and all the discernments and all the definitions that are written instead of are men, where may we all come closer to those definitions. And as you heard in the first part of the lesson, the person has to be afraid to think of himself. So let's hold on to that now, as well as I've explained. Dear teachers, when Rav explained the concept of a square, He said right to left is the light of, and right left towards what? Yeah, Raf made this drawing, right. The square. Hope it's big enough. Let's make it bigger. Make it bigger. Made this drawing. Specified. They said that there's this connection between, and we say this connection exists between them, like that. And when we relate this is, already after the restriction, we say that the light of is moving from above down. Why? Because the light of represents the connection from the upper one to the lower one. It's the purpose of creation. So whenever we talk about any wisdom for that matter, it's from above down. The expansion is from above down and is moving sideways, you could say it. Equalizes everything. That's a lot of. So he said also this was an example that he gave when he brought students that studied elsewhere, that Rabash didn't want to see the drawing. We're not talking about material realizing these ideas, rather when cholists make a drawing they describe the relationship between the forces. So here the connection between bin and there's a diagonal, it's a symbol for a force called, and also specifies that the letter Al, it's also written in the Zar you have above and you below it. Talks about the letter of that's above, the par, and when it comes to below, the par comes down, and then there's the shattering which you have to correct. So these are all spiritual forces. We're not materializing anything. You're not going to do anything in our world with it. Rather, we talk about the forces of the light of is the purpose of creation. That expands from above down. And the light of Bina is the light that gives the power to equalize the forces that are under the influence of Bina. Thank you, friends. Rob said that we only work in lines. What does it mean in our practical work? Well, what does it mean? It means that we really want to have a line. Line means that the created being begins to divide himself to all kinds of definitions and divisions in relation to the light. Why? From after the restriction, we begin a new move in creation where it's not just circles that exist, but also a reality of a line exists. What does this mean? That the created being wants to receive in order to bestow, and therefore he measures himself all the time how much he can receive from the light in order to bestow, and that's called to receive the light. In line, in a thin line, of course, and you asked how is it connected to us? We are making efforts and exercise as much as we can also in order to try for us to have the intention to have such an intention in order to bestow. We act in this, we try, but this is what we want so that we will be able to not just drown in the light and disappear in it like it was in the first state, and also we're not aiming for the light to wash us and fill us without any intention of our own. So we want to receive the light in a line with the intention in order to bestow. That's what we're aiming it to. Okay, as thank you for this wonderful lesson. So just to be clear, the definition of the circle, what I don't understand is, if we take a circle, a sphere in this world, let's say an orange or something, and I draw a point on the orange, and I turn the orange around, the point is not going to remain in the same place. It's not equal in the same place on this circle. So what does it mean that we say that in the circle everything is equal? How can it be? Everything is even. How can it be? In the circle everything is equal relative to compare to the distance relative to the center. In a circle or the sphere every point has an equal distance to the center. What does it mean? The circle, when we talk about, is according to the order of cause and consequence without up and down, meaning there's no more important or less important, closer or farther. We only have the order of cascading down from above down. Rab also draws it here in this way. When we talk about, let's say, the order of the cascading of the four phases of direct light, we have the known order. First we have root. This is the upper part. After that, we have phase 1. After that, we have phase 2. And finally phase 4, Alf. This is Alf. This is Jewish root. Alf. It shows us that nothing disappears. There's no absence in spirituality. There's simply an order of cause and consequence. The first one begets the second one. The first one doesn't disappear. It still remains. It's inside of it. And then that's why you can also draw it in this way. This kind of drawing. You have one quality inside another quality, And the end is here. There's no development beyond that. But there's still circles. There's order of cause and consequence. But there's no order of above and below. When do we start talking about in terms of above and below? Only after the restriction. When in those 4 phases a line begins to expand and that line defines up and down. This is called up and this is called down. Closer to the creator or so is considered up, and closer to the center, to receive, is down again. According to the qualities as said, I'm not talking about drawing, but about spiritual forces. So what's closer to the creator, to the quality of bestow, is called up, and what's closer to the quality of the created being, the will to receive, is called down. And the 4 phases of the red light is still in their development. There's no up and down because the light in the vessel come out as one. There's no definition of upper and lower, only the order of actions. Cascading down in the order of cause and consequence, but there's no up and down where a part is more important. Called up and a part is less important. Called down, that's what creates the circles and later in them the line. I think last question, women 2 please. For me please, it says that after the restriction it said something about the light was deficient. I don't understand that given that we're dealing with a cause and a consequence within a circle. They talked about after. Again, after the restriction, he talks about. After the restriction, he mentions that the light was deficient. And I don't understand how the light is deficient given that we're working within cause and consequence, within circles.